Welcome to TSAT. Today friends, I am going to introduce environmental issues to you. In this context, we need to know what environment is and what is environmental ecology. So, in this context, environment is the habitat in which we are living. So, in this habitat, we have got both biotic aspects and abiotic aspects. In this process for survival and for the process of development, we need to exploit the resources in the environment. In this process of exploitation of resources, we are destructing the environment because there is a resilient capacity for every ecosystem. In the process of exploitation of resources, when we break the resilient capacity of an ecosystem, the capability of an ecosystem to cope up back, even though you have destructed, loses by the ecosystem. In this process, the ecosystem itself collapses. So that is the reason why, as an administrator in future, to execute the policies framed by the government to protect the environment, as an executive, you need to be very clear and you need to understand the environmental phenomena and the ecosystems. That is the reason why this has been made part of your entrance examination because you need to know about environment. So, in this context, I am going to introduce you what environmental ecology is. In environmental ecology, we study about these different kinds of aspects. One is ecology. So, ecology is the study of ecosystems, the relationship between the biotic and abiotic aspects. What are the different kinds of living beings we have got in the environment? How do they interact with the abiotic aspects in the environment will be part of ecology. It studies about biodiversity. Biodiversity means, bio means life. The existing different diversified life forms. What are the different variant types of plants? What are the different variant types of animals? What are the different variant types of microorganisms? How do they vary in different ecosystems? In the equators, in savanna, in the tropics, in the temperates, in the polar regions. Every latitude or a geographical region is being demarcated into climatic zones on the basis of the temperature or precipitation conditions. Accordingly, the living beings have adapted to these territories, developing a unique ecosystems in different regions. In an ecosystem, when you have classified into an ecosystem, there will be a homogeneity in terms of flora and fauna, homogeneity in terms of environment, environmental conditions, in terms of weather and climatic conditions. Based on these factors, you can demarcate an ecosystem. Next topic which we will be discussing is ecological succession. So, the existing life forms in different ecosystems have not been created as it is. They are the resultant of evolution. In this process of evolution, different species in terms of flora and fauna and even in terms of microorganisms have been subjected to evolution. Succession of species one after the another, which has led to conversion of simple to complex species. In this process, you have got different types of communities being explained in ecosystems known as these climax species, etc. So, depending upon these, the climax species means the species which have been finally been established in the process of evolution is described as a climax species. So, climax species is the resultant of ecological succession. So, for example, we discuss about climate change. So, the way the atmosphere is changing in terms of its precipitation capability, temperature capability, composition capability, etc. Because of n different factors, what is happening is gradually there is a change happening. This change happening is both natural and man-made. So, what are the factors which are natural responsible for climate change? What are the factors responsible for climate change because of man constitutes this climate change phenomena and the consequences of climate change, and the measures need to be taken to avoid this climate change. What are the domestic laws you need to execute to avoid this? What are the international conventions being made to avoid this kind of climate change we need to go across? Next is conservation. So, to preserve the biodiversity, what are the measures need to be taken? To preserve the existing climatic and weather conditions, what are the precautionary measures need to be taken? Constitutes conservation. Conservation means trying to preserve the conditions as it is by nature in terms of ecology. This is where this chapter deals with. Next, we need to deal with environmental pollution. What is pollution? What are the different ways of pollution? How it happens? What are the precautionary measures need to be taken? Constitutes about this chapter. Next is environmental degradation. What are the factors responsible for the degradation of the environment and how to control it? Next chapter is environmental impact assessment. Means in this process of exploitation of resources, what happens is that the environment degrades. In this process of the rate of degradation need to be estimated, because I have already mentioned that every ecosystem has got a resilient capability or the resilient capability. So, you need to know whether we are crossing this resilient capability. So, to know whether we are crossing or not, you need to always estimate or observe the changes happening to the environment in terms of the composition of the air, temperature conditions, quality of the soil, biodiversity, species extinction. In different ways, you have to estimate in different dimensions possible. Precautionary measures need to be taken to that particular aspect. Where to take, and you will be able to know when you are able to study the changes happening in different dimensions, both biotic and abiotic. Next is international conventions and national legislations, which I have discussed. The measures taken here to control the environmental changes happening which are negative. The current aspects we need to discuss. For example, the Glasgow conference happened regarding climate change is an example of current aspects of environmental aspects which we need to study. The environment has got certain spheres. First of all, before getting into the environment, we need to know what are the different spheres of environment. These are the different spheres of environment. Atmosphere is a sphere of environment. For example, biosphere is an example of a sphere of environment. Biosphere consists of, bio means life. So, the plants, animals and microbes constitutes the biosphere. Atmosphere consists of the air, the composition constitutes the atmosphere. The hydrosphere constitutes the water bodies, the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, etc. constitutes the hydrosphere. And the lithosphere constitutes the soil and rocks, constitutes the lithosphere. So, when we study all these aspects, then only environmental aspects can be understood in a holistic manner. These are the different spheres we need to deal with to understand environment. This is how the lithosphere, the biosphere and the atmosphere interacts for the survival of the ecosystem. So, the ecology deals with the study of organisms in their natural home, interacting with their surroundings. So, in this process of our survival, whether it is a man or any other living being has to interact with the environment. For example, in the process of constructing our houses, we need to excavate to manufacture cement or iron or sand, etc. We are destructing the environment. So, the way we interact and the way the rest of the living beings interact is in a different manner. For example, a plant interacts with the environment. For example, the plants absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, but we intake oxygen and we release carbon dioxide. So, the way of interaction varies from species to species. How it happens will be part of environmental studies. So, an ecosystem is a self-regulating group of biotic communities of species interacting with one another and with their non-living environment, exchanging energy and matter. So what do you mean by this? All these living beings interact with the non-living beings, non-living aspects. For example, right now, for example, you are breathing air. So can we survive without breathing air? We cannot survive because oxygen is in a continuous requirement. We are interacting continuously with the abiotic aspect. The classic example is breathing in air is a classic example of interacting with the environment. So all the living beings interact in a different manner. In this process, there is exchange of energy and matter for our survival. So how this phenomenon of exchange of energy and matter is happening, we shall discuss. Ecosystems can range from large forests, deserts or grasslands to a small ponds. Ecosystems can be natural or man-made. So you have got aquatic ecosystems, for example, the marine environment, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers can be given as an example of aquatic ecosystems. The forest, the terrestrial ecosystems, you have got the forests, the deserts, the ice caps, the glaciers. You have got different regions of the topographical features of the earth having different ecosystems which are man-made and which are natural. So what are the examples of ecosystems which are natural? What are the examples of ecosystems which are man-made? I will be giving you some examples here. So in the case of scope and importance of ecosystems, what are the areas which we need to study? Ecosystems are the habitats for flora and fauna. So all the living animals, plants and animals live in an ecosystem. The habitat which we are living is considered as an ecosystem. Ecosystem provides resources for the purpose of development, food, clothes and shelter. So whatever it may be, the essential food which we are consuming, the clothes which we are wearing, the houses which are being constructed, industry, raw material, whatnot, every source is being extracted and exploited from the environment. That is the reason why ecosystems are very much important for the purpose of development. Ecosystems regulate the flow of matter and energy. So the amount of energy which we are receiving, the matter, we are the accumulation of matter. We are made up of matter. From where we have got our material or the body with which we are made up of. This is being acquired, accumulated through the process of consuming food. From where this food you have acquired? From the plants. From where these plants have acquired? Plants are autotrophs which have prepared their food material by observing certain materials from the atmosphere and the soil. So, how this energy, this process is known as photosynthesis. The energy essential to make this metabolism known as photosynthesis is being done by a catalyst known as the sunlight in the presence of chlorophyll. So how this energy is being fixed into the plants is studied in this process, and how the energy flows. Ecosystem helps conserve soil and build soil organic matter. So here in this context, what happens is, for example, what is soil? Soil is a combination of organic and inorganic composition. Inorganic composition is derived from the weathered and eroded rock. Organic matter is being derived from the decayed, dead plants and animals. So when these two compositions mix, it results in the formation of a soil. The soil is a very essential resource, because without which cultivation cannot happen. So here in this context, when you don't have vegetation or a topographical region, the plants will be holding the soil tight, intact, without being subjecting to weathering and erosion. So that what happens is, the essential nutrients in terms of iron, nitrogen, calcium, potassium, magnesium, whatever it may be, the phosphorus, are being absorbed from the soil by the plants, and we consume the products synthesized by the plants, and we are accumulating in your body through the process of nutrition and digestion. We are acquiring the essential material. So, without a part of ecosystem known as vegetation, without holding the soil, the essential nutrients cannot be preserved. So, that is the reason why soil is very much important. And building soil organic matter. So, here the organic matter which is being derived from dead plants and animals are being preserved in the soil by the roots of the plants. So, that is the reason why soil is very much important. By this time you might have understood why soil is so important. And next is we will be discussing in detail in other episodes regarding the importance of soil. Ecosystem help to purify air and water. So, for example, plants absorb carbon dioxide. So, it controls the amount of carbon dioxide, reducing the pollution. The vegetation in the catchment region of a river basin will prevent the weathering and erosion. When the soil is being held tight by the roots of the plants, not subjecting to weathering and erosion, the roots of the plant provides larger pore spaces, which helps in increasing the rate of percolation of water, increasing the level of water table. So, in this context, what happens is the underground water increases, because of which it leads to avoiding surface runoff of water leading to floods. So, increasing the vegetation in ecosystem avoids floods, preserves water, only allows the water slowly to drip slowly in the underground to the slope gradient, supplying water continuously throughout the year to the river basins into the river channels from the higher catchment regions. These higher catchment regions with vegetation and roots in the soil acts as a sponge holding the soil, releasing the water, dripping drip by drip throughout the year, avoiding floods. In the absence of this, the surface runoff increases, increasing in floods in rainy season and drought in the summer season. So, that is the importance of ecosystems. Degradation of rock results in the formation of the soil. So, as I have already discussed that the weathering and erosion of rock leads to the formation of soil. The soil inorganic matter is the resultant of weathering and erosion. Organic matter is derived from the dead plants and animals. The concept of ecosystem. An ecosystem is an integrated unit consisting of interacting communities of plants, animals and microorganisms whose survival depends upon the maintenance and regulation of their structure and their function. So, what do you mean by this is, ecosystem has got a structure. Ecosystem's structure is being divided on the basis of trophic levels. Each trophic level in an ecosystem is being divided on the basis of the mode of acquiring nutrition. So, and each trophic level and each species in an ecosystem has got a function. So, if you are able to know the reason why the ecosystem is being divided into structure and function, you will be able to clearly understand the importance of an ecosystem, the importance of trophic levels, the importance of biodiversity. In the case of an ecosystem, which I will be elaborating, ecosystem has got certain components here. So, what are the different components as I have specified? Ecosystems contain components like abiotic components and biotic components. Abiotic means components of an ecosystem which doesn't have life. So, climatic factors are factors of ecosystem which doesn't have life. Edaphic factors means soil factors which doesn't have life. Soil organisms live in the soil, like microorganisms and macroorganisms like the earthworms, termites, etc. live in the soil. So, which are known as soil organisms. So, the climatic factors like the rain, the intensity of solar flux or light, the wind and temperature impact an ecosystem, constitutes the abiotic factors. The amount of rainfall, because without water living beings cannot survive. The more the amount of water, the amount of living beings surviving in ecosystem are more, less the amount of water, less is the vegetation, less is the animals. So, water plays a very major role in an ecosystem. Next, light. The more the sunshine, the more the plant grows. In the absence of sunshine, even there is water, the plants cannot grow. Because plants cannot grow, the fauna doesn't develop much. So, that is how light and precipitation impacts the ecosystem. The wind, the directional flow of wind from a polar region to a temperate region, or from a tropical region to a temperate region, impacts the temperature condition over a region, because equatorial air in terms of trades or tropics, the temperature over a region is been modified warmer. The winds from the polar regions and subpolar regions towards temperate and tropics modify the environment, cooler and colder. So, the temperature conditions of an ecosystem is being influenced by the prevailing winds also. Next is the temperature. So, the more the temperature, the less the temperature, depending upon the availability of water, the rate of evaporation is being impacted. Accordingly, an ecosystem is being modified. So, every aspect being projected to you is very much important in modifying the ecosystems. Soil edaphic factors. So, here the soil factors here, for example, the soil is not the same. It varies from the black cotton soil, the alluvial soil, the laterite, the red, the desert soils, the sandy soils, vary from region to region, because of which the mineral composition, the nutritional value, the organic composition, the water holding capability is not the same, impacting the life over a region. For example, the biodiversity in the Thar Desert and the biodiversity in the Gangetic Plain, variation is because of soil. The pH level, the potential of a substance to release hydrogen ion, so which determines the acidic and basic nature, impacts the biodiversity, because each living being got adopted to a pH level. When there is change in the pH level, the organisms which can survive in a region is being impacted. So, for example, if the soil turns acidic because of acid rain, the bacteria in the soil dies, which is natural, dominated by a fungus. So, the pH even impacts the living beings. With the increasing in the pH leading to acidity, the leaves lose their waxy coat, and the leaves decay very fast. The minerals available, the sodium, potassium, magnesium, iron, if the iron is absent in the case of soil, chlorophyll cannot be made properly, because iron is essential to make chlorophyll. When chlorophyll is absent in the plants, animals cannot get iron in their blood, which is essential to carry oxygen. So, it impacts both the flora and fauna. The mineral composition in the soil impacts the flora and fauna. Topography, for example, the slope gradient. The type of crops you can cultivate in the slopes of Himalayas or Western Ghats are different. The type of crops where the slope gradient is less, in the case of Indo-Gangetic factors, are different. Natural ecosystems or artificial ecosystems are also being influenced by the topographical features. These are all the different abiotic components. In the case of biotic components, you have got different biotic components like producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers means these are plants, or green plants are considered as producers, which are responsible for photosynthesis, which is responsible for making food material. On these plants, all the organisms in the ecosystem are dependent upon directly or indirectly. That is the reason why they are known as producers. Consumers are organisms which are heterotrophs, which cannot prepare their own food material, which depend upon other organisms, might be animals or plants, are known as heterotrophs. The next type of biotic factors are decomposers. Decomposers here implies like any organisms, a microorganism like bacteria, which breaks the macromolecules and degrades the elements in them into microelements, which are made available to the plants to reabsorb again, which are helpful in the recycling of matter in the environment. So, these are the basic biotic components being classified into producers, consumers and decomposers. The consumers are further being classified into primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers and quaternary consumers, or otherwise also known as predators. So, in the case of primary consumers, the primary consumers are also being described as herbivores. Herbivores means animals which are dependent only on plants are considered as primary consumers. The secondary consumers depend upon primary consumers. The secondary consumers are otherwise also known as carnivores. For example, take the case of a lizard is a carnivore, a garden lizard is a carnivore, a snake is a carnivore. So, in the case of primary consumers, a deer, a grasshopper can be considered as a primary consumer. Next is the tertiary consumer. For example, a lizard eating a grasshopper or a hawk consuming a lizard or a snake can be considered as a tertiary consumer. Next is the quaternary consumer or the predator is one which hunts but which cannot be hunted. So, here at this place, at the topmost place of the ecosystem in the structure of this trophic level of a predator, we have occupied this position in all the ecosystems, might be aquatic ecosystems or the terrestrial ecosystems, because we are hunting every animal possible. If, for example, previously tiger or a lion can be placed as a predator, but they have lost their place because you are hunting these animals to extinction. So, because a predator cannot be hunted, so you have occupied that position. So, man is a predator because we are catching fish in the marine environment, we are catching whales, we are catching sharks, what not possible, everything. So, that is the reason why the natural predators, like for example, the orca is a predator in marine environment, tiger is a predator naturally in our forests, but they have lost their status because we are hunting all these animals possible. So, these are the different components of ecosystem. Ecosystems are classified in different ways. So, ecosystems have been classified on the basis of exchange of water and energy, matter and energy. So, they are been classified into open ecosystems and closed ecosystems on the basis of exchange of matter and energy. In the case of open ecosystems and closed ecosystems, in an open ecosystem, energy is exchanged from the ecosystem, from the outside of the ecosystem. Ecosystem where there is a free exchange of matter and energy are open ecosystem, whereas in the case of closed ecosystem, where there is no exchange of nutrients from outside. Example, space shuttle can be considered as an example of a closed ecosystem, which is man-made. Ecosystems can also be classified into natural ecosystem and man-made ecosystem. So, when naturally existing an ecosystem is, we can call it as a natural ecosystem. Example, prairies, savannas can be given as an example of the deciduous forest, or the equatorial evergreen or the tropical evergreen can be given as an example of natural ecosystem. For example, in the case of man-made ecosystems, the Indo-Gangetic plain can be given as a man-made ecosystem, or the agriculture. So, we have removed the natural forest at a region and we have created a different kind of agriculture which is not natural. So, these are examples of man-made ecosystem. The classic example is the Gangetic plain, or the aquarium which you maintain at your home. Fishes which you have in the water in an aquarium can be given as an example of man-made ecosystem. Third way of classifying ecosystem is terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystems. So the ecosystem existing on the land are known as terrestrial ecosystems. For example, having distinct climate and species like the equatorial evergreen or the savanna or the tropical deciduous or the taiga, the different regions in the earth. And the second way of classifying is aquatic ecosystems. Aquatic ecosystems are being classified into marine ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, brackish water ecosystems. This is another way of classifying ecosystems. So these are different terrestrial ecosystems existing at different latitudes. So okay friends, we shall meet in the next topic discussing about the structure of the ecosystem. Thank you.